What's up, everyone? It's Gavin or Tweek.
What up, what up? Charles or Chuck.
What's going on, everyone? It's Matt or Haz. Welcome back to Tweek Talks. We're really excited this week to catch up with each other and catch up with the Smash Ultimate scene at large. It was a slower weekend across the board, but I still think there were some really, really big wins and results across the board that we will be talking about today. Plus, don't forget, if you want to hear a little bit more and get some more out of myself, Charles and Gavin this week. No Marcus. He's doing grown man stuff. He will be back hopefully next week, I assume, but we'll see what happens. But if you want to hear more from us, we got our Patreon, of course. Check that out. Patreon.com/TweekTalks. Pretty sure that's the link. I'm just guessing here. So we're going to be covering, our patrons have sent in some questions. We're going to be covering specifically, we got a question about when you're playing Smash, how do you personally control the tempo, or how do you play the lead position in a match versus how do you play reactive to your opponent? So it's kind of like playing position 1 versus position 2, and how do you volley between the two, and how do you balance that? So really good questions as always from our Patreon. So if you want to be a Patreon, go ahead and subscribe. You can send in questions as well if you hit the appropriate tier. That's enough shilling. Oh, no, it's not actually. We got Watch the Throne coming up in 2 weeks. We got to watch the Throny, jabroni. Okay, make sure you check that out. Me, Charles, and Gavin will all be there. No Marcus, RIP, of course. Wait, he didn't die. He's just chilling. So sorry, that was a little intense. Marcus is perfectly healthy, Chad. Don't worry. We got to watch the Throny come up, and we are super excited for it. We're going to be at the Guild House all weekend, getting delicious food and drinks at the venue, and also the coffee down the street. We're very happy to be in NorCal this time of year, of course. Very, very nice time of year to get out of, and Gavin to get out of Northeast and head over to Cali for a couple of days.
Yes. And
some super hot Smash Ultimate action, of course, with all of our invitees and everyone coming up. Speaking of, some of them played this weekend too. We're going to be talking about them. But before we get into that, how you doing, Gav? What's going on, man? Welcome back. How you feeling?
Doing well. Like you said, that's been something on my mind where I feel like I have to make the most of any trip to the West Coast during the winter, and like that's something I told B is like, when I go to the West Coast, I'm gonna try to get actual sunlight because there's not that much of it over here, and it's very cold. But yeah, I'm pretty good. Mario RPG came out, so life's great.
The W. You already beat the whole damn thing. You already platinumed the game, if that was a thing in Nintendo games.
Yeah, I even when I was done, I was like trying to like justify like some other way to like keep playing the game. Like, oh, could I do this? Could I do that? Like, I did everything. Like every mini game, like the monster list, like the game, the post game, like is like when I was done, like I was just walking around in the game, like I don't want to close it out, but there's like no reason for me to keep playing unless it's literally starting over, which I did consider, but I did not do that.
I bet you won't last 24 more hours. By the time this episode went live, you'll be halfway through beating the game a second time, would be my guess. Yeah, I just started it too. For those of you who don't know, yeah, it's one of your favorite games of all time. Mine as well. Charles, have you ever played it?
No, I've never played it.
Chuck, come on, man. It is just, we were talking about it today, and I'm like probably halfway through the game, playing it for like the 8,000th time or whatever. But the thing for me with that game is it's just so comforting. Like there's something so comfortable about it. It's like the difficulty's like relaxed, but if you fall asleep, you could definitely lose. Like you gotta always be paying attention, and the music, the vibe, like everything about Mario RPG is very special, I would say. So definitely, those of y'all who haven't checked it out, definitely do. I like plan my work day around it, where I'm like, all right, if I finish all this work by this time, I can hop on Mario RPG for a little, like you just play 20 minutes, which is like a good amount of progress through the game.
That's the thing about that game. You could play it for, 6 hours if you want, or you could play it for like half an hour, and you'll feel good about it, I guess. Yeah, I went to the store today and like just to like grocery shop and stuff, but I just like went to see the games, just to physically see the game like being sold at a store. Like I already have a physical copy, but I was like, yeah, I just like want to see that. Like I don't know, it's definitely special for sure, and I'm glad everyone seems to be enjoying it, even the people who didn't like play the original or anything like that. B hasn't played the original in a really long time, and she's just as passionate about it as I am now, so that's pretty awesome, to be honest. She said it's like in her top 5 or top 3, which is, she has a pretty expansive like video game experience, so I feel like that's pretty impressive because she's played a bit more than me. Like a lot of games I play are recommendations from her. So, and every time I play a game recommended by her, it ends up being one of my favorite games. So if she likes something that much, I know it's something special.
Oh yeah. All right, let's zip out of the forest maze for a second. Charles, how you doing, man? What's going on? Sorry, we had to. You know how it is when we get talking about Mario RPG. So sorry you
Of
had
course,
to
of course. I mean,
live it live on the podcast. Our fault.
it's a dope game, and I mean, it's also one of Void's favorite games. So he used to tell me about all the different like speedrunning strategies for the game. Like, I know a decent amount about the game, but I still haven't played through it. But I've been watching, other people play through it, either just through like Discord streams or like watching Void stream on Twitch or whatever. So I've definitely been like secondhand experiencing the game, which is cool. I definitely do want to go through and do my own playthrough. Of course, it sounds dope, but yeah, I've just been doing a bunch of stuff with my mom back home, and then obviously like Smash stuff. Watch the Throne has taken up a lot of time, obviously, just because we're getting really close to the event. But I'm feeling very confident, and I know just from like I used to do a bunch of TL work in 2GG, but this is my first time being like more in charge of it. So I definitely felt like there's a lot of growing pains, but yeah, I'm very confident in the event, and I'm really excited for the event coming up. So yeah, just been staying busy. Unite commentary has been really fun. So
Hell yeah.
I know me and you have been doing a lot more Unite commentary. It's another game that we enjoy and have a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, overall, just been having a lot of fun. Port was obviously really sick, right? So I mean, Seattle's always cool. And yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of like settling down because Watch the Throne's the only event that I'm going to for the rest of the year, and then I'm also planning to go back to Hawaii for more of like a vacation rather than work. So yeah, I mean, I feel like most people kind of tone down towards the end of the year, so that's what it feels like.
I felt like Port was a lot of people's last tournament for the year, or last big tournament, because Watch the Throne going to be an awesome tournament, but obviously it's an invitation, only 16 players or whatever we have. So
Right.
yeah, it's going to be good, man. It's going to be good.
I'm interested to see who's going to enter Genesis Black because that's the last qualifier a week before Watch the Throne. So I hope a lot of good players go. I mean, there's so much talented players that still have a shot, especially in the U.S. where it's like worst case an East Coast to West Coast flight, right? Not as committal. So it'll be interesting to see what player lineup we have for Genesis Black, and obviously who actually like qualifies into the tournament.
Yeah, bro. Speaking of tournaments, I think we can get into a couple that we saw this weekend and a couple key results. I think the biggest one we saw was LTC over in Texas, of course, taking it down for the home stay too. My man Shadic, he killed it. Like I'm not gonna say I'm surprised or anything because I think we all knew that a result like this was awaiting Shadic at some point in his awesome Corrin. But it just happened to be this weekend, which I love to see. So many great wins, so many good W's. Dark Wizzy, too, getting a second place. Really, really great placement for Dark Wizzy. And then I also noticed 2 Zero Suit Samuses in top 8. What's up, Mars? Come on, man. You got to come on. Not the character anymore, okay? It is what it is. You got Shu and Doorstop both doing incredibly, incredibly well. Not to mention, kind of surprised, like Mutace only getting 7th place at this tournament. A little surprising, but nothing that Mute can't clean up and bounce back from. So on top of that, I was watching Skinny the Pooh as well. I always want to see how that player does now, like because you beat the one trick pony allegations after beating Leo and going on and having another good tournament beating Shuton. Always interesting to watch players like that who can really mess with the progress of a bracket. So Skinny getting 13th, nothing too crazy at this tournament, but overall I thought it was a great tournament, and I think it's time that we talk about Corrin again. Gavin, what do you got?
Yeah, first off, congrats to Shadic. One of the players that's becoming a household name. I feel like that's like always what I like update the world on is like, oh, who are the handful of players that are becoming like household names in tournaments lately? It feels like that's like my role for some reason. But yeah, I do have a lot to talk about with Corrin, whether it's Corrin specifically or comparing Corrin to similar characters in the meta. Yeah, it's just really interesting, like watching Shadic and like seeing the game plan and like seeing what works really well and stuff like that. Corrin's also like relatively popular right now, whether it's like players like Shadic and Neo like maining them, or like Leo has a pocket Corrin that pops up once in a while. he's still thinking about, how much he wants to use Corrin or not. And Corrin's also a nice like pick up and play character across multiple games, Smash 4 and Ultimate. And yeah, I don't know. I was just, after watching Low Tier City, I was just thinking about Corrin a lot, and like why Corrin is so good specific to themselves. And something that's really crucial about Corrin, compared to other sword characters, is how effective the advantage state is at 0% specifically. Um, Sometimes, not even just for sword characters, it is kind of a sword character thing. Everyone obviously has like bread and butters at 0 that can maybe lead to something larger, but usually it's a little awkward, like 0% in Smash Bros in general, right? Um, but Corrin cares very little about 0%. A string that Corrin would do at 0 would be a string that Corrin would do like a little after 0. You know what I mean? Like, for example, like let's look at Cloud at 0%, right? A lot of the combos, they are big damage, but they're not like the initial hit doesn't like put you into tumble, right? It's usually a bit weirder and like more specific. But Corrin's up air puts you into tumble at 0%, a lot of the time, like stuff like that. Or even the moves that don't send you into tumble go right into pin, kind of like how Cloud would go into cross slash. But like for Corrin, she's like specifically really, really good at 0% strings. And then there's obviously the usual stuff we would talk about, right? Like her frame trapping is like particularly good for a game like Ultimate, and stuff like that. But yeah, like when I think of Corrin, like I think of like how impactful the game plan is starting at 0%, especially for a sword character. Like think about, like it might be a little awkward. Like think of like Marcina getting like a grab at 0. Like they have stuff, but like is much gonna happen afterwards? Question mark. Or like when they get like a hit at 0%, like they might have to get one more or something for like something big to start happening. And sword characters are usually more stray hit archetype in the first place, but when Corrin gets a hit, like it is ridiculous how much damage is dealt, and it's not really talked about often. Like Corrin gets an up air at 0, and like it just like say goodbye to your percentage. Like you're at like 50% minimum. It's pretty interesting. It makes Corrin feel more unique to themselves. I'm kind of ranting a bit, but that's difficult with a sword character. Usually it's hard to justify maining a sword character when you have so many other options, right? That could be higher in the tier list. But if you can be a character that brings something specific to the table, it doesn't matter if there's a character that's quote unquote better than you on the tier list. If you're doing something that's a bit more special. And Corrin isn't just your average like sword character anymore. It feels like Corrin has a specific spot in the meta that's for them, and that's pretty interesting considering at first glance you would think it would be a little bit harder because of the archetype.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Hez.
No, all you, Chuck.
So the way I'm like viewing Corrin, or I guess even Ultimate in general, we're starting to see frame trapping be something that has more value. We're seeing it. I mean, Fox has kind of been relevant. I mean, has been really relevant from the start of the game, right? But Corrin had to get some buffs and stuff. Game and Watch became relevant about halfway through. I would say those are probably the 3 best frame trapping characters, or like the ones that we see a lot in these top 8s, top 32s, top 16s. And I think we're starting to see more value in offense, because I still think Lucina is a better character, but in tournament, when you have
Dude, I don't know.
Well, right, it's debatable, right? But I'm saying I value when I think of Lucina, I think defense, right? Like you have out of shield, you have consistency across the board. But to your point, Gavin, it's like okay, when Corrin gets a hit, it's not like 1, 2, done, right?
Yeah.
And then it's
No,
like
it's
that's the
starting.
situation, and then it resets neutral because like Cloud gets a back air, gets the cross slash at 0, right? You still deal what 30, 40 damage or about there, but you reset into neutral. Whereas Corrin, or like even a character like Fox, right? Fox gets you on a platform, does a million up airs, and then afterwards it's like, do you double jump to go to ledge, or do you continue to get frame trapped by these like really overtuned aerials that cover a lot of space but have no lag, right? Because kind of it's like ultimate, but it's just the nature of those characters, right? So it
Yeah.
almost feels like you always have to go to ledge. These characters are also strong at ledge, also strong at juggling with the frame trappings, right? So it's like, what has better value in this economy, like quote unquote, or meta, right? Is like, do you go with the defense of Lucina, where it's like, oh, I can get these stray hits, I can also get these juggles, but my juggling sequences aren't as volatile. Like I might get a hit, then I have
Yeah.
to win another juggle situation, get a hit, win another juggle situation, get one more hit. Whereas Corrin, it's like, oh wow, I can either jump and get hit, or I can air dodge and then get hit again. It almost feels like against Corrin or some of these other characters, you just should take the hit instead of air dodging, because then when you air dodge, you go back closer to the ground, and then they're like, oh, I get to start my combo off the ground again. Cool, let me ladder you back up. Do you want to air dodge again and let me ladder you back up, or are you going to go to ledge, right? So
Yeah.
it's weird. I don't know, and I feel like in a tournament setting, it used to be you go for the defense, right? And like obviously we've seen Lucina be very prevalent in the early parts of the game. I think we still would have seen Lucina be prevalent later on in the game if like someone like Leo stuck with the character during his prime, obviously. But like obviously Leo could play whatever character he wanted and win back then. And I still think the same case is now. He just has to figure out which one he wants to commit to in the meta. But then we even saw Proto have a lot of success with Lucina, right? Alongside of Min Min. So I just feel like now we're getting to the point of the game where like 5 years in, or almost 5 years in, and everyone's offense is getting so locked in and so online that like the defensive players or the defensive characters have to go through more reps of their defense as the game evolves and goes forward. But the characters that are more frame trap orientated, or like their strengths come more from their offense, they as time goes on, they have to go through less reps of their offense because it's becoming so refined, right? Whereas defense, your defense can be amazing and refined, but you still have to go through the reps of the defense, right? No matter what, you can't skip out on those like quote unquote reps. Is my thought process. Versus when we think of, because I feel like if I asked this question 1 or 2 years ago, no one would say Corrin over like Lucina, right?
Yeah.
But now it's an actual conversation. I don't know. Like
To me,
maybe Corrin is better than Lucina. I have no idea.
It's kind of crazy to me. It's not a conversation, and it's in the other direction. Like to me, it's not even worth thinking about. That's how much better I think.
Oh, you think Corrin is that much better than Lucina?
Yeah.
But see,
Wow.
I've always thought of
I don't
of
know.
pretty high of Lucina, so I still think Lucina.
I understand. I could be overreacting, but I do
The results are there.
from Has first for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I appreciate Charles. Like, what are you talking about? No frame traps in this economy? A Smash Ultimate in this
Yeah.
economy didn't exist.
Gotta have
I
those
love the
frame
way you
traps,
said
man.
that. It was good. The thing I was gonna say about Corrin, and talk about consistency of a character, the frame trapping from Shadic was, or the ledge trapping from Shadic was ridiculous. This tournament, you get to go for the 2-frame with the pin, then you can reset land, and then you can cover pretty much every option off the ledge off of reaction. And even if they roll by you, because Corrin's pretty slow on her feet, if you turn around and get an aerial, it's a nice combo string to the other side too. So just the way that Shadic is able to pilot the character and use the big aerials with Corrin, especially up air and neutral air, and forward air too, is so stupid. His ledge trapping looks so good and so consistent. His play around the ledge in general was good. And he had to beat Zero Suit, so that's how he's ledge trapping well, because it's not just about keeping your opponent at the ledge. It's stopping them from going above you, because if you try to go above Corrin with Zero Suit and you flip jump super high, you're dealing with up air. You know what I mean? So your positioning needs to be to stop them from flip jumping just barely above you. Go with this forward air, swat them out of the air, all that good stuff, man. Shadic was just on fire, honestly, and it showed the strengths of the character. And I think I don't know if I'd put Corrin over Lucina. I feel like that's a little reactive to how things have been going recently. When's the last time we saw Lucina that's like S tier play? It's been a while, like maybe Banham, but I don't even remember the last time we saw him. So I don't really think it's Lucina's fault, is what I'd say. And I think that's kind of jumping to just looking at Corrin has better reps right now, is what I would say for sure. But I think they're close. I think it's closer than it's ever been. They might even be like on the same tier and like really close to each other. They might even be equal. But I wish we had some better Lucina rep. I mean, Mr. E's been doing well, better than he usually does. He's been improving, which is great.
I feel like he's been doing pretty well, but I don't know. Like there is like I feel like the concepts I'm talking about with Corrin right now, I guess, are a little broad, and that's why I wanted to talk about them in the first place. It's pretty.
But
fun.
that's why they're good. I think having those broad game plans is so good in tournament, right? And I think you can even attest to some of like these things where it's like, what is good in tournament? Because I mean, obviously you've been there, right? You've played at the top level on all these big stages, and like I don't know, I just want to hear your insight on something like Corrin, where a very like simplified offense when it comes to frame trapping, and it's not like stupid easy, right? Like there's still different routes and stuff, so I'm not trying to take away from anyone that plays Corrin, but like Corrin's offense is definitely can become flowcharty, but that's a good thing, right? And I just want to hear your thoughts on like how
Yeah.
strong that can be in a tournament environment when you're like really nervous or there's a billion thoughts going through your head, right?
Well, so I guess to start off, like the first thing is I've always had like my eye on Corrin from day one, and like sometimes I wasn't even sure why. You know what I mean? Like even B and I all the time would talk about before the buffs. The buffs made it easier to be like, yeah,
Buffs
like
were important.
the buffs made it easier to be like, yeah, we
Yeah.
think this character is great. But we've just both thought the character was so good, and I was just like, yesterday, like just prepping for the show, I was just thinking like, what is it about Corrin specifically that I'm valuing so much lately, especially now that people are doing well with Corrin and all that stuff. Um, and Shadic won the event, so it's going to be the main topic. Um, the 0% game plan came to mind, especially when it comes to sword characters. But I also wanted to think of like the the situation afterwards, right? Because that's the most common thing with a sword character is you get hit by the sword character, and now you have to play. You have to fight for your life of dealing with the disjoint and getting juggled and all that. That's usually the gameplay. And with Cloud, like when I think of the 0% gameplay, there's like windows where you can breathe. Like when I'm fighting against Cloud or playing as Cloud, unless it's Spargo, then like you're fighting for your life the whole time because he's so fast. But there's these windows where whether it's in neutral or when you're getting hit against like Cloud for some reason is just the example. That's like a big meta sword character right now. So my apologies if I don't use other examples. But when you get hit at 0, right, it's mostly horizontal when Cloud gets his most valuable hit at 0%, right? Whether it's forward air or back air into like cross slash or something, or like a dash attack. So there's like these weird gaps where you're not like just above him getting up aired immediately or something, right? Like there is some gaps where you can breathe in neutral. And the big one in neutral is what direction Cloud is facing against you, right? If he's facing forward, it's a little easier, right? Like forward air is a bit slower and like easier to find. And then back air is obviously the crazy one. But with Corrin, she can do something she would do front facing even when she's back facing, right? With things like up air being like used as like a forward air type of thing in neutral, and then neutral air hits in every possible direction, right? And then she still has a spacing type of tool that Cloud would be using in forward air. But all of these things have the same outcome, which is what Corrin wants, right? And they send you directly up, and they always have a follow-up, even at 0%, right? So it started out with me talking about how valuable the 0% is. But the interesting thing about the consistency of Corrin, we talk about the frame trapping and whatnot, so this kind of relates, is the consistency of you being in danger when you're fighting Corrin. And the interesting thing about it is it's always. There's no gaps in the neutral where when it comes to the moveset where you can breathe, right? Everything is dangerous no matter what direction she's facing or no matter what move she's using with her disjoint. With Cloud, there's like weird small windows where, a big one I like to think of as a Smash player myself is like Donkey Kong when talking about something like this, right? Especially like, let's think of Melee Donkey Kong. The danger is like when his back is facing you, right? Because he's going to be back airing in neutral, right? And when he's front facing, it's completely different. Like he's not just going to have a move out. He's not going to have a move out all the time when he's playing neutral when he's front facing. Like that's an easy one to describe to someone. And it's interesting with a sword character like Corrin because like that oomph, that consistency, it's like it's always there and it's always a threat. The 0% game plan is fantastic. All of the moves lead to like very similar like values, which is really interesting. With Cloud, it's like almost there, right? And I think he gets a little bit more oomph in like his general speed and the general impact when the move connects. But Corrin, it's like even when she's hitting you, like if she swings a little early, you know what I mean? Like we're talking about why that's valuable. That's okay, right? The frame trap's right there. She can like kind of force the issue, even despite not having the general like stats of like ground speed or something. So I don't know. I've just been thinking about why Corrin is so valuable lately, and those couple things came to mind, like the general like always threat kind of perspective and the 0% game plan were really big for me when watching and thinking about the character.
Yeah, yeah. I think the convert like you're saying the conversion rate, right? And I there's a term that the FGC will use for that. I don't know the exact term, but essentially like when a character in a traditional fighter, like most of their moves combo into like
Yeah,
the standard combo route. That is, I feel like what you're talking about, where it's like, okay, all these different moves lead into the same
yeah,
scenario. That is, which is the win condition for Corrin,
yeah,
which means there is insane consistency in Corrin's offense because it doesn't matter how Corrin hit you. You're going to
yeah,
be put in that same frame trap situation. And then you can't, because the reason why juggling frame traps are so strong is most players will fish for neutral air dodge or some type of air dodge to the ground and get a reversal, right? When you take that off the board, if you're fighting like Corrin, Fox, Game Watch, like that's like not fucking possible and you actually
yeah.
take more damage,
Against those
then
characters, it's the risky play, right? Like
exactly.
it's the best case scenario if it works, and it's the worst case scenario if it doesn't, which is not always the case versus every character.
Yeah, and then on top of
It's
that, I
actually what
mean,
they want.
and I actually want to go around the horn and ask everyone who they think is the strongest sword character in the game because I think that's a very
Ooh.
sick topic, and I think that Corrin, having an uptick. I mean, you say Corrin is better than Lucina, but I don't know if you just don't think Lucina's too strong, which is like a respectable opinion, right? I think Lucina can be kind of all over the tier list
Yeah,
nowadays because of right, but now there's like
whether it's player
Cloud, there's
base or the character itself. Like,
Ooh.
so.
right, there's Cloud, of course, Sephiroth, just one of the strong. I'm just kidding, yeah, right.
Definitely super. Well,
This
if
this dude's
when he
not even
first
in
came
the
out, we all
conversation.
said that. That's for sure.
Yeah, because we're dummies. Anyway,
Oops.
so with
Can't be right
all
every
with all
time.
of the, I mean, obviously we're expert on sword characters because we thought Sephiroth was the best sword character on release. So I definitely want the same team of people to give their opinion on just the strongest sword character. And it's just so, oh god, it's such a hard topic for me because even thinking about Cloud, right, where I think Cloud could be in contention for the best sword character. Cloud has that conversion game that Corrin has at the earlier percents when you can combo things into cross slasher, right? Or like combo things into a fair spike or something like that. But outside of that early to mid percent, that conversion rate all of a sudden disappears and he becomes a straight hit character. I think the crazy thing about Corrin is you're a broken straight hit character, and even at like 100%, Nair will still combo into back air and you'll die. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So Corrin has like all these two-piece conversions, and on top of that, if you're at 140, 150 against Corrin, you can't get grabbed. You can't get hit by up air, startup up air, reverse up air, back air. Like there's so many things that you can get hit like straight hit wise, which is like a traditional sword character type thing, right? Where it's like, oh, they're super good in these last hit, straight hit scenarios where you're at really high percent, but they have all these safe disjoints that they're throwing out. But then Corrin is also bringing out like, oh yeah, I'm also a confirmed character. Like, what if I just hit this neutral or I frame trap you into this thing that combos into a setup,
yeah.
right? Which is more along the signs of like a character like Diddy or something like that, where it's like, oh, I want to get you into this confirmed situation where I can get a down tilt and an up smash, right? Like get
The
some kind of like quick move into a lethal move.
That's the scary thing when you're fighting Corrin is despite having the like consistent routes and you're so prepared for the usual when you're getting hit, and then all of a sudden they go for like a reset into like the neutral B, or they go for a reset into like a tipper side B or something like that, and like it's one of those things where like you're so busy on like worrying about like getting hit that you didn't realize that like the mix up could actually kill you type of thing, because like you things happen so fast. But yeah, for me the best sword character is like between Cloud and Aegis, and I don't think anyone else
Oh
deserves.
wait, I forgot about it. No, can't.
It's
Aegis.
Aegis,
Aegis don't count.
bro.
Aegis
So
doesn't count. Second best sword.
I think it's
It's not an
tricky, or
interesting
the
conversation.
Well, I
well,
still think Cloud and Aegis is a conversation.
yeah, I
That's
think
the
it's
thing.
tricky because Aegis has not been getting the results that they used to get too. But I do so like two things. I thought of two things when you said that with Aegis is one, I feel like the results with Aegis haven't been as good. But three things I guess. One that, two, it's mostly people dual maining the character, like dual maining, like using them specifically using them as a secondary, like Spargo. But then three, I think that Sonic stocks have gone up recently, and Aegis is one of the few characters in the game that beats Sonic. So I also think that's
Yeah.
good. And my conclusion, based on all of that together, is I think Aegis is harder than we initially thought. I think initially when Aegis came out, very easy to pick up, very easy to run with. Counterplay came back, and now like they become harder because when I think of things that are broken in Smash, it's that classic like SoCal or K9 quote, like that's not Smash, right? Quote unquote, that's not like Kazuya, right? Like electric's just killing you. That's not Smash. Aegis is Smash, like they are kind of Smash. Like they're broken, they're really good. I think Foresight's like the biggest.
It's
breakthrough.
overtuned Smash, but it's Smash.
Exactly, but it's still a sortie.
It's a little too much Smash Bros.
It's too much Smash Bros.
Bring it back to Smash 4. This is Smash. All right.
Instead of saying it's not Smash, for this character, it's too much Smash.
It's Smash Ultimate, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think when that happened, so people were initially like getting carried a little bit because the character is really good and no one had counterplay to them. Now people have counterplay. We're even seeing Sonics do well against them, and that's like one of his character's worst matchups. But I think what I've learned from that is I think Aegis is harder than we thought. I think initial spike in results was because they're really strong. But now I think this little dip that we're seeing, just a slight one, like even Shuton had a rough tournament recently, who also secondary's character. Maybe they're a character that demands full attention and they need to be mained, but I'd still say they're the best. Like that was the one that I had as well. So those are my thoughts on Aegis. How about you guys?
Oh, did you want to say something, Evan?
I was recently talking to Leo quite a bit about the game.
Ooh, I'd love to hear some Leo insight.
Like, I don't know. Whenever we're both struggling, like sometimes we just talk to each other and just say like what we would do if we were in each other's shoes, type of thing.
That's cool.
So, and like, we had this conversation of like sometimes it's just for fun, like just we're hanging out, and sometimes it is like genuinely advice. But we asked each other, who do we think of when we think of like what character do we attach ourselves to if we had to pick one, in general, and it wasn't just in Ultimate. And for him, he said Wario. For me, which I was like a little surprised, not really that surprised. Like I thought it was cool, and he thinks if I played Wario or PT or something that it would be great. So I've been thinking about what he had to say there. And for him, I told him I think of Meta Knight when I think of you, just because it's like
nice.
what I first saw you doing, and I also personally think Meta Knight's underrated in Ultimate and stuff like that. But I was talking to him about Aegis because we have like pretty different opinions. Like he thinks Aegis is a bit overrated and all that stuff, and like it might be not worth it or harder than it looks. And I was trying to put my perspective of like why I think Aegis is really good still, and like what people could be doing a little more that they aren't doing. Like I was basically putting my defensive perspective into Aegis that I would want to see more, like kind of like when I played Joker for a little bit, like just trying to see like, oh, if I did a little bit of this, how would it work? And yeah, I don't know. Like from my perspective, when it comes to the best sword character, there's a few options. The ones that make
the question has changed to top 2 sword characters because I forgot about Aegis.
Like if I had to pick one to play and like I couldn't play anyone else, I would pick Aegis, just because there's no way the ceiling isn't the highest for Aegis, regardless of like any meta conversation about them right now. You know what I mean? Like there's no way. Like I feel like I would be silly to pick someone else when it comes to like, oh, you have to play someone, and like who are you going to try to win with? Like this has the most potential. Like it has the most potential, and it's one of the easiest ones to play right now. Like it's I would be silly to play someone else. But there's also a world where Cloud is like just as good which is interesting. But I do value Corrin that much. I think something interesting about Corrin, like the players piloting Corrin right now are doing really well, and I think they're really good. And I also think players like Leo who pocket Corrin could be making a big impact with Corrin as well. In my eyes, it's like, would you be the type of player to do better with Aegis with the whole like switching thing, or do you want the characters to combine into one and play Cloud or something like that? Like do you want more of like a middle ground? And I think Corrin is actually closer to that type of vibe than I expected. Like they're that good. Like, oh, do you want to play Aegis and like kind of play a bit of both, or do you want to play the middle ground when it comes to like impact and speed, and you could play Cloud or Corrin? I think Corrin is worth considering. That's how much of an impact I think Corrin has, and how much uniqueness Corrin brings to the table, which is good because, let's look at someone like Ike, right? Like, despite Ike having great stuff, it doesn't matter if you're not bringing something specific to yourself. Like, it's not gonna be worth it. And that's why, like, whenever I talk about Game & Watch, because I usually place Game & Watch a little bit lower on the tier list compared to most. But what I will always stand by is Game & Watch brings something so special to the table that it almost doesn't matter, right?
Yep.
Like, Game & Watch has a specific place in the meta, and that's really special. And when you're a sword character, you're putting yourself at risk of, well, if there's characters better than me at what I do, like, what's the point of me existing? And Corrin doesn't have that problem at all. I feel like Corrin really stands on their own. But yeah, it's definitely Cloud and Aegis, and it's no question. But I would probably say, at this very moment, I would say Aegis.
So you have
Charles?
Aegis and Cloud. I'm going to say, okay, I also share the same similarities when I view a sword character. And this is probably why I never really had Corrin too high. And I still don't think Corrin is like,
You know who's important to consider here? Because if we're going all the way down the list to where we're talking about Corrin, you know who we have to talk about in a weird way? Sora.
Oh,
I was looking at Sora as well.
Sora, technically not a sword, it's a Keyblade, but like I guess we could categorize it the same.
If we want to exclude him, that's fine with me. I wish he was excluded from the game.
But it's also the whole concept of like you have to bring something to the table if you're gonna be this archetype. Because
he's like the touch of death story, right? Like that's his thing.
And he's weird without. He's already unique without that, right?
It's funny you're talking about this unique attribute to the table, and I feel like a lot of people felt like that's what Corrin lacked for the longest time.
Yeah, it's like completely rubber banded.
Absolutely, and it's like Ike, you said. I think a lot of people would have put Corrin and for a while Byleth and Ike in the same category. Like, yeah, they don't really do anything that is that interesting. And at the same time, all of those characters shined at different eras in Ultimate. And I mean, Byleth still obviously too. I would throw Byleth in there. But Charles, who are your top two right now?
So my top two would be Aegis Lucina. I still have a lot of faith in Lucina, regardless. I just look at that character and I'm like, I look at the moves, I look at the numbers for the frame data. I'm like a super on paper kind of guy. And I don't even think it's like the execution is not touch of death Sora combos when you're nervous as fuck. It's just being really fucking good at the game and knowing how to edge guard motherfuckers. Like that's all it comes down to. And
whenever I fight Proto, it's like a comfortability when it comes to fighting Lucina is, like I said, those gaps where you can breathe when you're fighting a sword character. That is a big topic today for me. And when I fight Proto, it's like when I fight Spargo, where all of a sudden those gaps don't exist anymore because they're that good with the character. So I know what you mean. Like there's definitely moments where I'm fighting, because as a Diddy player, when I'm fighting Lucina, like I'm usually just like, this matchup is awesome. Like this is great. But when I'm fighting Proto, it's like you can't breathe as much, and you start to reconsider things.
Yeah, and I mean that's really impressive considering Diddy has a tool that is a very good problem-solving tool when it comes to a sword move, because Banana is transcendent in this game, right? So it's a very good option to have. Obviously, you need time to pull it. But my thing in this meta or just in general in Smash Ultimate that I value a lot with Lucina is you have a frame 3 out of shield option. So that already is insane. It's a kill move. You can B reverse it. You also have a frame one out in the air that's a little risky, but we've seen Proto play at Summit. He did not give a flying fuck and he spammed it. But it's obviously really punishable and stuff. But having that frame one out, considering this is like a frame trap meta where it's like, oh, I'm gonna like do this move and then I'm gonna mash this move because I cover all this shit. Well, what if someone has a frame one out that has a hitbox attached to it afterwards, right? Like that, Lucina changes your opponent's offense. And like, I'm going to even go all the way back to Genesis 6 when it was Leo versus Void. Void ran at everyone at Genesis 6, fucked them up combo game wise. And then Leo for grand finals picked Lucina. And then Void had to like think about his offense a little bit differently, right? Because of the frame one out. And I don't think that was the only reason why Leo won Genesis 6, which was like the first biggest like ultimate major, by the way. So like this was a very important tournament and the player base was like arguably at its largest or one of the largest tournaments, and like it had a crazy amount of viewership, right? There's a lot on the line, but just that defense is so strong. Just the frame 3 out of shield, just the frame 1 out in the air. And then after that, yeah, you kind of got to play honest ultimate, right? You got to like get a couple hits here and there, and then you got to like forward tilt them at the ledge. But you can also edge guard the shit out of people. I know some of the other meta characters are a little harder to edge guard, like Game & Watch and stuff like that. Game & Watch, Steve, like Sonic has a very good recovery. So some of these other characters can be a little harder to edge guard, but outside of those ones, like Lucina can do a fantastic job, has one of the best up Bs when it comes to resetting to ledge with the hitbox. If you hit them on your way up to the ledge with your up B, you can combo into a back air. Like it's a confirm, you know what I mean? You have insane offensive tools. It's not Steve Diamond forward smash, but I still think this character's defense warps the game enough to the point where it's just a really strong pick. So I still have faith in Lucina's defense. The only thing that would probably change my mind would be if other sword characters optimize their defense, like Pyra. I mean, I think Pyra Myth are already the strongest sword characters, but with the new Footstool stuff that Pyra players have been figuring out, like Footstool out of shield and like the double shield thing to make it more consistent and whatnot, like getting Footstool out of shield with Pyra is a very fast option, right? It's not frame 3, fastest frame 4 if best case scenario, but you can get the Footstool down there onto a platform, you up smash them, it's a kill confirm. Like that obviously is a very strong defensive mechanic. Like bringing value to your shield is so good in ultimate. And then Corrin could do Footstool down air, right? So these things, I feel like early meta, Lucina and Cloud are just great because, I mean, Cloud had to get some buffs and stuff because his up B was like really, really bad. But after the buffs and then, you know, Spargo started doing really well, your defensive play is not like, I got to do a Footstool. You know what I mean? I have a really good up B out of shield. So that is way easier to execute. But I do think we might get to a point where these other sword characters that have a little bit harder defensive maneuvers to do, like footstooling out of shield, if the player base gets really consistent, I could see Corrin Fox being a lot more doable. You know what I mean? So that's my big thing is like, do you have the defense to fight some of these like Omega mash fast speed characters like Fox, right? And Fox is only going to get more popular from here. People are finally realizing like Fox isn't the complicated one to play amongst the space. He's actually got a simple game, in my opinion, like a more simple game plan, but like you just got to play fast, which just involves you just playing the game a lot. So if you know what I mean, like we could see an uptick in Fox, and we're already seeing an uptick in Fox in terms of top level play. So are these sword characters, are they going to have the defense to deal with that? And I think Lucina is definitely kitted all around, and yeah, that's my thought process on the sword characters. What about you guys? Top 2 sword characters.
I like it, Charles, because defense wins championships, right? That's what everyone says. Having more options. We always talk about how optimized offense is getting, so being able to cut that down as much as possible. Plus, Lucina's offense is great. Airspeed's amazing. Can actually edge guard, as we've seen from Proto so many times. I love it. Let me help out. So Marcus isn't here, so let me hit the well. I got it. You already know. It's Agents of Marth, okay? True. I'm saying Marth right now. All right, come on.
Marth has the same defense as Lucina.
Get it together, Marcus. It's not Marth. I would say, are you ready for this?
Ooh.
So I think best sword character in the game, I do think it's tough, is the first thing.
You think it's close? Say. Like your 1 and 2 are pretty close then.
Well, even beyond that, I would say. Let me think. Okay, number 1 is Steve. Bro's got a sword. That's a sword character.
No,
Number 2 is
doesn't
Pitt.
count.
Shout outs to Zach Ray the GOAT. That's my order. Lock
I
it in.
love that
Send it.
answer, bro.
That's such a good answer. Steve and Pitt, lock it in, baby. You're gonna tell me
Okay.
Zach Ray's not the GOAT? There's no arguing this.
He is the
Steve
goat.
Steve has a sword? He does. And he bodies Fox with it. You just talked about how good
He
Fox
does
is.
use a lot of disjointed attacks. So
Terry's forward air. Shout outs to that move. I was thinking about saying Terry.
I'm changing my answer to
Terry's
Game &
still
Watch because
the
I think
best
he's a
sword
sword character too, because Naren back here.
Because he has a key, and it's like Sora. We counted Sora, so you have to count.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, got it.
On a more serious note, something I wanted to talk about that I think is really crucial with these sword characters, and it's not about being like better or worse, but like it's very interesting. It really determines a lot of like, you know, where we categorize them in terms of like, are you more defensive, offensive, and a lot of it is like the ground game and what they get out of certain grounded moves, because there's a trend with these characters, right? Some of these characters with disjoints have the sliding down tilt, right? Like the Final Fantasy guys.
The Square Enix down tilt.
Yeah, or like,
And
you know,
Belmonts.
Joker's in this weird situation where he's like kind of adjacent to a sword character type of vibe. Or do you have the spacing one, right? Where you like the Fire Emblem down tilt, right?
Yeah, the poke.
Or do you have one that pops up? And you know, like Corrin's been a big topic today, so we can use that one. And I think that's really, really interesting to think about because for Corrin, like a lot of these sword characters don't get a grounded move and then just start partying like combo time.
Corrin and Sora both have it, so
like,
it's funny that we talked about
Corrins
Sora.
are not like crazy, like at all. Like Corrin doesn't get like what I was saying with like the 0% gameplay being flexible. It's definitely not because of down tilt or up tilt, but you actually pop them up and you start like directly upwards and you can get some true follow-ups, which is pretty rare, right? Like Sephiroth, there's nothing I'm doing on the ground that is of like huge value. Like it's not gonna like win me the match or something, right? Like there's no combos or anything like that. Even Cloud's down tilt significantly worse when it comes to follow-ups than Smash 4. Cloud has up tilt, which is a great one when it comes to if we're talking about like moves that get immediate value when you land them. And it's just something that's worth considering, especially down tilts when it comes to sword characters. Those type of things can really change the game, and I think when it comes to sword characters right now, those sliding down tilts aren't the best case scenario for your character, I don't think. Because it's like this weird gray area of offense and defense, right? Especially because, you know, Joker's is the best because he's actually he does everything with it, right? Like his hurt box is physically moving and he's always getting follow-ups, which is great. But most of the time you're not getting anything. But then for a character like Roy, Lucina, like those down tilts are really valuable because they are great defense. And you know, you're not putting yourself at risk when you're using them. You're putting some pressure on and you're perfectly fine. And then a character like Ike and Corrin or Byleth, you know,
Sora.
maybe you get a little bit of startup or Sora, but you're getting great value out of it. So it's like we've been talking about, like, you know, do you want to go all offensive or do you want to go all defensive? And that's just really interesting to me right now because, you know, I play Sephiroth, unfortunately, and the ground game just isn't there when it comes to like what is this serving you, right? And something that's valuable about Corrin too. Sorry, I'm just a big fan of Corrin in my Smash brain right now. Is even something like the jab is disjointed and actually using the sword, where something like Sephiroth or Cloud for the first hit or two they're not. And you know, Corrin also has the 1-2-3 rather than the rapid jab, so you can like time the disjoints like in a frame trap or a ledge situation where it's like, did I hit it or not? And then you can react and just do the 1-2-3, and you're actually spacing from with a disjoint with it. I don't know, little things like that can really change up how valuable a character can be against the whole cast and against like traditional harder characters for sword characters. And some of those tilts are a big one. Like it really determines how you're going to play the game. Are you going to be more defensive or offensive? Because every sword character has good aerials that they're spacing with and juggling with. Like it's just it comes with the package. Like they all do that. But
What spec of sword character do you want to go? What talent tree do you want to go down?
the ground game is where it gets interesting because it's like they have an assortment of a few things at their core, and like which one were they given? And I don't know. I'm just right now at this moment. I'm a big fan of what Corrin has, for sure.
I think it's a fair assessment. Anything else on LTC aside from another big congratulations to Shadic? We all knew the kid could do it, and he did it. Anything else y'all want to say?
I mean, I guess Mario a little bit. Skinny the Pooh has had crazy results recently. Dark Wizzy getting second place. And I feel like the way I've been watching Mario be played lately is a little different, which is interesting. I'm seeing a lot more forward air, like in neutral.
Huh?
Like,
damn, that's crazy.
Like and like the pop up from it has been interesting, and like just the threat of it. Like it's like I can kind of see the vision, but it's something I never even considered before. Like, oh, they rolled in and you just like forward air the shit out of them and then like start comboing like that. It's like Melee. That's what they would do in Melee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking hype.
It kind of changes the dynamic of in terms of like the pacing and the flow of like Mario like pressing buttons in neutral. At first, I thought it was like kind of a joke, like, oh, this isn't that good. But then like when I saw the vision a little bit, I was like, oh, like I kind of get where this is coming from. But yeah, probably not enough to talk about Mario for this whole episode, but just a little side note. But yeah, I didn't expect this to necessarily be a sword character episode, but I don't mind. I mean, there's a lot of sword characters. I'm sure everyone has played a sword character in their Smash life, and I mean, despite maybe not being thought of like that, but I do consider myself a sword guy a lot of the time. I do have like the sword character brain. I have a lot of experience with them, so it's interesting to think about and compare their values and all that.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out Shadic because I think he had there's a lot of expectations going into Shadic going into port. I think he got a pretty tough bracket, but it was pretty hard to not get a tough bracket because there was two really good Fox players there that went really far. That matchup is notorious for being one of Corrin's harder matchups.
Yeah.
Even though he still went up against Light, still the best Fox in the world, still almost got the reverse 3-0. He was down 0-2, brought it back to game 5. Like, I think that's he's at least done it twice, if not more, but he's brought Light to game 5 twice, at least, maybe even more, but that's incredible. Like, that matchup is really, really hard. Yeah. So the fact that
just as bad as it was back then, it's just as bad.
Yeah. So the fact that Shadic is doing that and doing things with Corrin on the good matchups, maybe even like some of the other like more meta matchups like Steve and stuff like that, or, you know, other DLC stuff or just whatever's relevant now, and still also bringing Light to game 5s and stuff like that. Incredible stuff. And yeah, looking forward. I think if Shadic is able to push the character more defensively with like more consistent footstool dares out of shield and stuff, that's going to be really good against a character like Fox, right? When you finally slap Fox on the hand for doing like the 5th nair in a row, it that actually changes the game a lot.
Right.
So
I have a hot take.
Oh boy.
About footstool out of shield becoming a prominent thing of your gameplay.
Okay.
I think when it's put onto the table, most of the time it's better for your opponent. Okay, so hear me out. So especially if footstool out of shield is like your I'm doing this to survive option, I think you're screwed from the beginning, because it is so much easier to play around someone where you know on their priority list footstool is a big priority than it is to make use of the footstool out of shield. Like if I'm fighting against Corrin or Sephiroth, who is going to struggle with getting bullied a bit, and I know footstool out of shield is a savior for them, there is 1,000 things I can do to take advantage of that perspective in gameplay, while they have one thing, which is the footstool out of shield, which only works against one thing, and it's aerials on top of your opponent. It's not working on grounded moves. It's not working on special moves, other than like an up special that started in the air or something like that, like just some weird stuff. So yeah, Footstool out of shield is only really good if you have other out of shield options as well. If you can also fight against grounded opponents and all that and yada yada yada. If Footstool out of shield is something you're doing to survive, you're screwed from the beginning. That's my hot take.
I like it
Because it's so easy to play around. Like,
yeah,
It's way easier to navigate around Footstool out of shield than actually executing a Footstool out of shield.
Yeah, like
I for sure. Yeah.
Like even it doesn't even. It's not like it takes aerials on shield out of the table. It doesn't. In fact, in some ways, it makes it better because they're shielding so much and all that, and like like I only don't have to land on top of it. Like if a Rob is getting Footstool out of shield, it's like I'm just gonna nair in 1,000 other ways. Okay,
Right.
It doesn't change anything to the point where it's actually probably helping them that you're so focused on the Footstool out of shield. I don't know. That's my hot take about it. It depends, but if you look at Steve, where there's like way more variables to work with, Steve isn't doing it to like survive in the meta. Steve just doing it because he can. Like, like if
you might get a stock from it.
Like if Corrin or Sephiroth or whatever, like Corrin's is a little better because the down air is faster, which is good. So that means it's not like do or die type of thing, but like Steve's has so much room for error, and the down air is actually killing. Some of these characters aren't like KOing off of it; they're doing it just because they're sick of getting mashed on. Like I don't know, it's interesting to think about. I think a lot of people look at Footstool out of shield. Not saying Charles is at all, by the way, he's definitely not. But a big thing with Footstool out of shield is people view it as like adding something to the equation where it's like this is like solving something, when in actuality I don't even think it's helping as much as they think. In fact, I think like I said, I think it might be helping the opponent sometimes.
It's a very specific scenario. Like I think the most applicable thing that you can do with Footstool out of shield is if someone crosses you up and you don't know what side they're on.
Yeah,
that means that they're so close to you that you don't even know what fucking side they're on. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because if they're that close to you, you can don't mash, you have to time it, but like you can just go for a jump with no drift. I think the hard part about understanding Footstool out of shield is like, okay, well, if they're like so much units away from me or whatever, I have to jump out of shield, but then I have to like also have X amount of air drift coming out of the jump, and I have to make sure I'm over them, then execute double jump. But then I also don't want to be like mashing double jump, because then if I do like Footstool double jump, I don't get my follow up. So there's a lot of intricacies to it. I would say if you're a beginner of using Footstool out of shield, I would only do it when you know your opponent is like right next to you and they also have a low hurt box. So there's characters that notoriously are really annoying with hurt box shifting on landing. Cloud, Fair, and Bear, Fox forward air, Fox nair, like Pikachu back air, right? So you want to use footstools to punish low hurt boxes, because the lower the hurt box, the sooner you can initiate. You can get frame 4 footstools out of shield when your opponent's hurt box is like on the ground. So really close cross-ups, really low hurt boxes. That's like, if I had to try and generalize it, that would be my best way of doing it. But Gavin is right that there's a ton of other variables. Like once you go like 1 or 2 units away, all of a sudden this Footstool out of shield became like 2 frames different with like you get max acceleration out of your jump out of shield. And I know there's been
the opponent's not phased. They're not drastically changing their gameplay because of this. And think about it from this perspective too, of when you're actively looking for the Footstool out of shield, like when it's a big win condition for you, or like you're thinking it's like gonna like solve a situation, like think of the positional sacrifice you're making. You're kind of putting yourself into this defensive position and you're letting your opponent choose what happens next, right? Like that's already a little suspect to me in terms of like, is this really like your problem solver, this Footstool out of shield thing? Like
you shouldn't be using it to fish.
Like but that's the hard thing. It's as much as we can say, don't sacrifice your movement and your positioning to the Footstool, but it's like when it's a part of your game plan, it's really hard to just add it seamlessly.
Right.
It's not that simple. And like I think you really have to ask yourself, like let's look at Wolf, right? when we all think of Wolf, it's like, damn, like why isn't it happening all the time? Blah blah blah. Like Wolf is really big on positioning, right? Wolf isn't as good of a scrapper against these other top tiers. So you're saying, as good as it is numbers wise and against certain things that can be a problem, you're putting yourself in this defensive position first. Like you're just like going up to your opponent, you're saying, hey, this is my choice. Like I'm making this decision right now. Where in actuality, usually he's moving around a bit more. He has a projectile. He has like the drift, and it's a big change of pace, and it's really hard to seamlessly use it to the point where I think it's actually more so dangerous for you to have it that much in your game plan, and it's tough. And it's not like it's the same for every character, right? Some characters, they're doing it just because they need the numbers. They need the frame data. Some characters are doing it just because they have it and nice. And we already like Game & Watch running up and shielding against someone is very different than Sephiroth or Corrin running up and shielding against someone. Like Steve in Game & Watch running up to Fox and shielding is completely different than Sephiroth and Corrin running up to Fox and shielding. So I don't know. It's as someone that has a Footstool out of shield option that's like very important with Sephiroth, there's a difference between very important and like problem solving. Like, oh, this is gonna win me the game. Like it's something I'm very clear with my stream when I'm practicing. When Sephiroth Footstool out of shield dare is talked about, where I'm like, all right, they're asking me about it and all that. I'm like, disclaimer: this is not going to win you anything. It's not going to do anything for you in terms of like an obvious changer. It's gotten me a stock or a game, and I'm like super happy about it, but the move isn't even strong enough for it to kill 9 times out of 10. So
I was going to say, do you value it at all in terms of you don't need to do it every single time, but just showing that you do it once or twice just to show that you can deal with
this is a different conversation entirely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're hoping for, right? You're hoping to trick the Fox player into thinking they can't do something, and that's huge, right? Then maybe you can like dictate the pacing and like breathe a little bit, but that's the thing. It's definitely a facade. It's not like if you're getting Footstool out of shield and you think that something is being taken off the table as the person who's getting Footstooled, you're completely wrong, in my opinion. Like it's not taking that option off the table. In fact, it's probably the opposite. You just have to do it differently, obviously. So yeah, it's interesting. Like I said, it depends on if you're like why you're doing the Footstool. Like, are you doing it to survive, or are you doing it because you can?
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a case by case thing. But like if you use Fox and Sephiroth, you're using two very extremes where it's like, well.
I think that's why I'm talking about this in the first place, because
that's the usual situation you'd use in the
it's like I'm doing this because like I'm looking for anything to like survive in some of these situations, and when you find it and you realize not only is it not a game changer, sometimes it's even hurting you, then it's like, okay, like I don't know. It doesn't. It's the equation isn't as simple as you think when it comes to like shielding, aerials, grounded, and then you add Footstool, and all of a sudden like it's amazing. Like it's not that simple.
It's an option, but at the end of the day, like Fox hitting Nair versus Sephiroth getting Footstool there, well, guess who the risk reward is loaded into that favor by a fucking long shot? It's Fox, right? And it doesn't matter if Sephiroth Footstool dares a Fox player 3 times and then Fox gets the 4th Nair. Fox probably gets more value off of that 1 Nair compared to those 3 downers. So it's the risk reward. It's obviously case by case, but you got to use it in combination with stuff, right? Like, okay, I got the Footstool for like really close cross-ups. I can parry and maybe reposition. Or like
parry makes it weird too. Like when you parry something and the numbers are slightly different, it's like, okay, do I have something better than my Footstool, or is Footstool still my best bet? And then, my other character I play is Diddy, where he has crazy out of shield stuff, but then Footstool out of shield can be better numbers wise, but is the follow up more optimal? It's very interesting, but I liked what Haz said, because that's more important to me, right? Is like, if I show them that this is on the table, how much does that affect them? In my head, I know it shouldn't, and that's what's so upsetting about it, right? But if it does, then like that's a big green light for me to really change what's going on, and I can really win because of it, because it's on the table more so than like it actually happening.
Yeah, and with these characters, especially the ones you're mentioning that have weak out of shield game, who are going to be looking to rely on it more, then it comes down to like shield discipline is so important. Like, yeah, I Footstool out of shield the first time, and then the next 6 times I decided not to even look for it, right? Because I just know you might be baiting me, and then if I get caught, you call it out, and up air, it's just gonna be a tough time. So
Stuff
I
I've
think it's
learned
good.
where there's like option selects, right? Like the air dodge, like if you air dodge and down air at the same time or whatever.
Option selects, yes.
But if we don't talk about that for a second, I do this a lot where like you're saying right now, where sometimes with Sephiroth I'll Footstool out of shield, but I won't down air. Like I'll use it to escape, which is like it's insane how much I'm like working to like not get like shield poked or like something like that, right? But it is important to look at it from a more like vague sense of like showing someone the card is on the table and seeing what happens, because that's a big part of Smash in the first place. So as intense as I'm talking about it in the other direction, like a lot of people talk about it as like a game changer, and I'm kind of talking about it in the opposite way. It's still something I would never just like remove from the table. It's always important to consider everything, but I think I am talking so intensely about it because how often it looks like people think it's the difference between them like winning a set or not. When I'm very like, okay, let's reframe that thinking, basically.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a cure-all. It's just a part of the game plan. Like, it didn't fix everything, but it's an option that's there sometimes for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if the player base gets consistent enough at it, right, we can have a revisit the conversation a year or two from now. But like, we don't know if the player base will get that consistent at it. And
yeah, well, for me, it's like even if I got it every time, what it works against is it's too small. Like what Footstool out of shield's even working against in the first place. But it's not something I expected to be a main topic today, but it is very interesting, especially because of it's not like a one and done thing for every character. Every character does it different, like does it for different reasons, and what they do after the Footstool is very different as well.
Yeah. You didn't add it to the show notes, Gavin. What the heck? Come on, man.
Sorry, bro.
Mario RPG, Footstool out of shield. Come on, we tried
the usual topics every week. Yeah.
Actually,
Gino,
true.
Footstool out of shield.
Always Gino, bro. Always Gino. One thing I want to say before we hop off LTC real quick, then I'll toss it to you, Charles. Is shout outs to Kimono and AG. They killed it on commentary. Great knowledge between the two of them. Great energy between the two of them. And I realized, like, Charles, we are commentators. We never talk about commentary on here. So I just wanted to throw out compliments when appropriate. So nice job to the two of them. They killed it. And also the venue is super sick for LTC, and they held Third Strike. I got to go to this tournament next time is all I'm thinking. So shout out to the whole team there for putting on a great show. Everyone who made top 8. DJ Don was in there too. A great young Steve that we saw do well at MomoCon. Just a lot of great players. Grayson, a Rob from Texas who always does really well and had a 4th place finish here. So just a lot of cool stuff happening at LTC. What do you think? Close it out here, Chuck. Then we'll move on to the next tournament real quick.
Oh, for LTC, I mean, I had a great time. I mean, it was sick. I loved seeing Shadic just close out the tournament. Right, I think there was a lot of question marks. It kind of sucked that Mudace underperformed. I think I was very surprised when Dark Wizzy beat Mudace, but still, I mean, great stuff to Dark Wizzy. We still got to see a bunch of great competitors. Watching Zero Suit is always a good time, right? And then Shadic on top of that, being able to close it out. So felt like we got the good ending in a sense, because Shadic has been getting so many top 8s and then didn't really perform too well at Port, but it was really sick to see Shadic bounce back from that performance and close it out like in his home turf. So, shout out to Shadic. Amazing stuff. Gavin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that about wraps it up, honestly. We could get into the...
Real quick, we got to give Syrup a shout out, dude. We absolutely have to.
Oh, yes.
1,000%. Yeah. Sure. Couple tournaments. I can run through them super quick because we are on an hour and 10 already, so y'all wanted a long episode. There you go. You did not specify that 20 minutes of it couldn't be on Footstool out of shield, so, it is what it is, chat. So we have a couple different things. So there actually in New England, in CT, there was a big regional that ended up being a C tier called HOG Hog. It's actually been going on for a long time. And it was a C tier because the top 8 was Mr. E and Pelka in 8th, or tying for 7th, tying for 5th, Webb, JP, and Ling. And then you had Antimony, a great Massachusetts-based Steve player, I believe. It's either Massachusetts, New England for sure. So W right there. Fourth place to Antimony. And then some great household names in the winner's circle there. Jackal in third, Light in second, and then Syrup in first. So shout out to Syrup. We talk about Syrup on this podcast like once a month at least. Kid is getting crazy consistent. We got to see him on the come up because he's from Gavin's region of New Jersey and has been doing exceptionally well there, which is one of the best regions that we have in the country and therefore on the planet right now. Webb's from there as well. So Syrup didn't drop a set. He got 2 set wins on Light and was able to take one also off of Jackal. And I think those were all the best wins for Syrup right there. Yeah, and Mr. E and Mr. E as well. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Yeah. So shout out to Syrup. Shout out to Light for showing up to a regional and doing well, running into a Steve again. It's great practice.
Yeah. He goes to his local tournaments and his regional tournaments, which is admirable because I'm always asking myself if I should be doing it more or not. So I think it's cool that he's always down to just play the game no matter what the environment is. But yeah, I guess that about wraps it up.
Hey, one more thing. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm gonna go over the LumiRank recap real quick and just make sure we give everyone a shout out that did well this weekend. Can't cover everything because we have to make room to talk about Mario RPG, so that's what it is. So there's a B tier event in thanks Chris. Shouts to producer Chris. Southwest Canada. Ouch took a tournament and he had set wins on Apollo Kage and Big D, I believe, which is really cool. Shadic obviously won Low Tier City, which I think we covered well enough. Alan Dis winning a tournament in Mexico. Shout out to Snake at Mystic Portal. It was a C tier. Syrup we already talked about in Connecticut winning Ultra Hog 1. Going mostly Steve too, if I remember correctly. The next is MK Big Boss actually won a tournament in EU. Very cool. The Challengers Cup or the Challengers Arena. And the cool thing I liked about this is that Big Boss tweeted afterwards. He won the tournament. He's from Mexico. And he was like, dude, jet lag is so hard to deal with. Like, shout out to all the guys that, like, especially he called out Pluto specifically. So I thought that was really cool for Big Boss. Like, won the tournament and acknowledged like how grinding it really is to play that way. And then Yara won probably the biggest tournament of the year. It's a B plus. Sumabato 42. So shout out to Yara, one of the best Samuses, most consistent Samuses in the game. All right, and then we had a final C tier here. Matsunabe, the Falco, taking it down. Very clean stuff there, obviously, as well. So I watched a good amount of Smash this weekend. There's just always so much going on with Ultimate. It's hard to keep up. So good. Shout out to all our winners and everyone who did well in their own regard. So that's it. All right, Gavin. There you go. Yeah. Now you can take us out of here.
That about wraps it up. Long episode. I had a good time talking about the stuff that was on my mind after watching some Smash this weekend. And we're going to get into the Patreon content, which is going to be about the whole idea perspective of what it means to play first and what it means to play second. And thank you so much for watching and supporting.